a very, very warm welcome and good afternoon to everybody present here. Thank you so much for being a part of this masterclass. It's actually my second time on stage here. I was here last year as well. And I'd just like to give a shout out to the guys at TechSparks for putting this together all over again, and such a large, grand, and fantastic event. So a big round of applause for the guys at TechSparks as well. Thank you so much for having us. All right. So I am Pradyut Hande, and I spearhead product marketing for Netcore Solutions' flagship marketing automation product. Now, I understand how jargony that sounds, so I'm just going to break it down to you about what we do. So think of Netcore Solutions as a consultant to website and app businesses, right? We essentially are a behavioral analytics and customer engagement platform where we let every website business or an app business that are clients of ours, we let them know what their users are doing on the particular platform and figure out what are the best channels of engagement for the brand to pursue in an environment like that, right? And today, I'm not here to aggrandize my product, my brand, etc. I'm just here to leave you with solid, actionable insights and food for thought about how your website or mobile app brand can unleash the next wave of growth in the future. So without further ado, let me begin this particular masterclass. So we live in an environment today which is multi-channel and cross-device, right? The average customer, the average user out there currently uses about 4 to 5 different devices, and it's all interconnected, right? And for a brand, it becomes a massive challenge to identify what sort of messaging works, what sort of channels work, and what sort of timings they should send their communication at. And the customer expectations have also evolved over a period of time. Gone are the days of mass marketing, mass monolithic traditional marketing, because that's not what customers want anymore. They want conversations, they want engagement that is tailor-made to their specific need. And for brands today, the key challenge follows the 4R model. What do I mean by that? Essentially, brands today need to figure out how they can engage with their customers in the most personalized, timely, and contextual manner possible. So they need to send the right message at the right time, to the right customer, and through the right channel. That becomes the eternal challenge for a digital or a mobile marketer today. Customers want to be treated as individuals. They want information, they want offers, they want discounts, they want communication that is absolutely tailor-made for their requirement. Which is why brands today need to leverage all possible customer data in order to figure out what are the best ways to engage with them. So the first growth hack that I'm going to talk about builds on this same entire concept, and it's about dynamic website personalization. This can actually help brands that are predominantly web-based to boost conversions by almost 5 times. Now, what do I mean by that? We'll see in the next slide. So this is just to give you an insight on how brands today need to figure out the need to deliver the most personalized experiences possible. So a McKinsey report says that personalization can actually increase the efficiency of marketing spends by almost 10 to 30%. And how do brands actually do that? I mentioned previously that your customer data forms the foundation, the fulcrum of what campaigns and what marketing strategies you develop in the future, right? So if we begin at the bottom of this particular pyramid, there's a term here called customer data platform. Now, just to simplify that for you, what it means is your backend data is getting stitched, taking into account all historical behavioral trends of your users. Ever since the time that a particular user downloads the app, launches the app, the kind of activities he or she performs, the kind of interactions that a particular customer or a user has with your brand through your marketing communication. Does a user respond better to emails as a marketing channel, or does he or she respond better to push notifications sent by your mobile app? All of that is getting collated and collected and is getting enriched in real time over a period of time. And that forms the fulcrum of the kind of personalization that you can drive post that. Once you have this customer data platform or a unified view of your customers in place, you can then start segmenting your users based on various parameters. At a very basic level, you can segment them based on demography and their geolocation, right? You can go one level further and segment them based on their behavior, right? Their past purchase, search, viewing, multiple parameters that are determined by the behavior that they showcase. If it is a media and OTT app, it comes down to the kind of searches that they make, the kind of genres that they prefer consuming content on, the mode of payment that they prefer, the kind of subscription packages that they sign up to. So a multitude of factors determining behavioral-based personalization. And finally, the ultimate challenge, for a marketer is to figure out what the intent is, what the customer preferences are. So this becomes exceptionally data-driven, right? And if you add a layer of machine learning and artificial intelligence to this, it ensures that your personalization is taken to the next level. Now, machine learning is again data-driven. And all of this feeds back into the kind of customer data that you're collecting at the back end. So we'll come to this later. But let me just show you the kind of examples of the dynamic website personalization that you can carry out for an e-commerce platform, for example. Now, this is an example of personalization done for a first-time visitor. At the back end, you now know that this is someone who has come to your website for the first time. Perhaps you would want him or her to register as a potential customer in the future. And then this particular customer moves into another bucket altogether, right? And then in the future, you can actually tailor-make the viewing and navigation experience based on him or her being a returning visitor. Because he or she has actually moved down the conversion funnel. He or she has now gone from just being a first-time visitor to being a repeat visitor. So the messaging, the navigational experience, the viewing experience needs to be tailor-made based on this particular persona now. Personalization can also be based on browsing behavior. As I mentioned, it's all behavior-driven. So the kind of product categories that he or she has browsed before, the kind of product categories that he or she has purchased from before, all of that feeds into this kind of personalization. And finally, you can also carry out personalization based on days, seasons, or time zones that a user might log onto your website for. And mind you, this kind of personalization can also be done for mobile sites and to a certain degree for mobile apps as well. So just to give you a flavor of what Netcore's artificial intelligence engine can do, based on all this data collected, you can actually figure out the predicted probability of a user being able to purchase a particular product. Now, you are tracking their historical behavior, right? You're tracking their interactions with your marketing campaigns, their actions on your website, what items were added to cart, what were the products that were purchased, what were the items added to the wish list. And based on all that data, you create a profile, and then based on the clicks that they make on the website or the mobile site, you can, with a fair amount of certainty, say that the probability of such and such user, in this case, Riya Sharma, based out of Bangalore, of purchasing a particular product on your website is 32% or 29%, depending upon all the historical data that you're collecting. And this helps you, this degree of predictability essentially refines the kind of campaigns that you can target these customers with. Now, if you see a high probability of this demo persona purchasing, an apparel which is maybe semi-formal, for example, you would be pitching those kind of offers maybe across email, maybe through a push notification, maybe through an SMS, because the probability of purchase is that much higher, and those are the kind of offers or recommendations that a customer is looking for. So coming to my second growth hack, right? How many mobile marketers here? Folks who work at mobile apps? Show of hands. All right. Is user churn, uninstall a major issue for you guys? Yeah? So I think it's fair to say that user churn or uninstall is every mobile marketer's nightmare. Yes? Because it forms a very, very key metric of the kind of KRAs and KPIs that you're driving. And it is a reality that one must accept. Because at the end of the day, it's impossible to retain 100% of your customers. It is impossible. And churn is an inevitability. But do you just sit back and accept the fact that your users are churning and dropping off your app? That is something that is a no-no, a complete no-no, because that's not how mobile apps can actually scale. The only North Star metric that truly counts, whether in the digital marketing fraternity or mobile marketing, is your user attention. So if we just cast a glance on the kind of retention rates that most apps have over a 30, 60, and 90-day period, you would see that it goes very rapidly downwards, from upwards of 40% to about 29 to 30% over a span of just 90 days, which means that this is not a challenge that is restricted to one industry alone. This is an industry and app category wise and across an agnostic challenge. So I mentioned how this challenge is omnipresent. It is, a huge bugbear. But the way you can understand why your users are churning requires a very, very solid data-driven approach. So don't speculate, but embrace data instead. Now, while understanding user churn, you can actually now identify the exact events leading up to a particular app uninstall. So over a period of time, you can actually create a basket of factors that might be leading up to an uninstall, right? We'll see how that is possible. Let's say we have an e-commerce app, for instance, right? Or a coupon aggregator. Now, very often you are on the app to gain instant gratification, instant value, and you want to enter the coupon code instantly to get as much value as possible right in the moment. But there could be a situation where you enter the coupon code and it does not respond the way you want it to. Perhaps a user might accept it once, a user might accept it twice, but then if the app is not serving his or her purpose, then he or she is definitely likely to drop off and very likely to churn completely. So as I mentioned, once you have identified some of these events that lead up to an app uninstall, you can actually work on reducing the probability of these occurring in the future. By process of elimination, by process of correlation, once you have understood that these are maybe 4 or 5 key reasons my users are uninstalling my app, you can actually reduce the probability of those happening. Just for the sake of reiteration, I'd say that. And while that's happening, you can also track the performance of the app, the performance of the user interface at the same time, because that could also be a contributory factor leading up to an app uninstall. So once you've categorized these events into a basket, these become vulnerable events. And that's what you want to essentially eliminate to ensure that you reduce the probability of an uninstall. So just to cast a glance on how this works and how it has worked for certain customers, there was a social networking platform called Glink, and we saw that the maximum number of uninstalls was happening on day 0. Now, day 0 in the mobile marketing world essentially means on the day of app download and app launch. And by the process of elimination, we found that the key reason for this happening, we found that it was happening for the female customer segment. And we noticed that this was because most female users who created a profile and registered themselves received a large number of unrequited mail requests. And this was one reason why day 0 app churn was so high. And the way we ensured that Glink could arrest this churn was by directing them to the privacy settings right at the beginning to restrict the number of mail requests that they were getting on day 0. I'd come to what that growth hack was in the next portion of my presentation. But by doing this, they were able to reduce day zero churn significantly, and user retention actually went up by almost 40%. Similarly for GrabOn, which is a coupon aggregator, GrabOn soon realized that people launched the app, but they just could not fathom how to navigate. They couldn't actually find the, they used to uninstall the app within 48 to 50 seconds of downloading because it just didn't serve their purpose. They couldn't find the coupon finder feature. And that's when GrabOn realized the fact that they needed to draw attention to that particular feature within the app. And doing that, they were able to increase day zero retention by a little over 9%. So that brings me to my third growth hack. Now, we saw how it's important to understand why users are uninstalling your app, but it's also important to figure out how you can arrest this in the first place, right? And the only way to do that is by preempting user churn. And one powerful way to do that is through something that we call contextual app walkthroughs, which can actually boost user attention by 12 to 15%. What do we mean by contextual app walkthroughs? We'll come to that in a second. But why is there a pressing need? I mentioned that in order to arrest churn, you need to preempt it, right? And contextual app walkthroughs is an embodiment of what a mobile marketer today needs to embrace, because we've reached a stage in the entire mobile marketing evolutionary curve where we need to think beyond existing channels, right? All the mobile marketers here would agree with me that there are just 3 or 4 major channels that you can engage your customers on, right? You'd use push notifications, in-app messages, email, SMS. Any other channels that you guys use? Any of the apps here who might want to add something to this? Right, so these would be a majority of the channels that would be part of your engagement mix. And all of this essentially needs to be done in the most personalized, relevant, and timely manner possible. But with contextual app walkthroughs, you can do it in real time. What does that mean? These are essentially assistive screen coach marks, pop-ups, or drop-down tips that you can actually use to improve the initial onboarding process. You can use it to actually highlight sticky features within the app. You can actually create custom tutorial walkthroughs within the app navigation experience. And you can also nudge passive users in real time to take action. So the next few examples will make it absolutely clear about what I was talking about. So think of contextual app walkthroughs as real-time triggered in-app messages to a certain extent, where you're actually drawing attention to perhaps key features within the app. For instance, think of the Swiggy Pop feature that Swiggy came up with sometime last year. Right? They realized very soon, once they launched it, that it was an underutilized feature. They really wanted to draw attention to it. And one way that they went about doing that was through a walkthrough, essentially creating that level of visibility within the app, drawing attention to that particular feature. As I mentioned, you can also nudge passive users. Users land on your mobile app page and they're unable to navigate. They are not sure of what to do next. So they fall into a certain customer segment which you can track at the back end, and that's when you trigger a real-time contextual app walkthrough, nudging them towards taking further action. One classic example is that of Zomato. Anybody who has used Zomato would be very familiar with the kind of hand-holding that they do, because the word onboarding can be slightly misleading. Onboarding is not just when a user downloads the app and launches it for the first time. Onboarding is actually a consistent, periodic effort through the entire life cycle of the mobile app user. So in this case, you can see how Zomato is actually drawing attention to some of their key features across on the navigation panel. So we've applied this for a few customers, and we've seen that it produces a massive uplift in terms of engagement, average time spent on the app, and eventual conversions. So this is the example of the News Plus app, where by adding a contextual walkthrough based on the kind of content that a particular user is consuming, they were able to increase user engagement by almost 2 times. So that brings me to growth hack number 4. We've seen how dynamic website personalization or mobile personalization works. We have seen how it's so critical to understand why users uninstall your app so that you have complete visibility and you're tapping into your behavioral data that you're capturing. We've seen how you can arrest this churn and preempt it and increase your customer engagement and conversions. But as I mentioned, to a large extent, today's mobile marketing strategy is still driven by traditional channels such as push notifications. And one massive challenge, apart from churn, as I mentioned in the past, was the fact that mobile marketers are unable to reach their entire target audience, and through push notifications specifically. And this is a major, major issue, especially with your Chinese Android-powered OEMs, the likes of Xiaomi, Vivo, Oppo, Huawei, you name it, and a mobile marketer or an app marketer will tell you that he has a massive challenge reaching out to these particular smartphone users. Correct me if I'm wrong? Yeah? And so if I may just ask the app fraternity here, what would your normal push notification delivery rates look like for a particular campaign? Anybody? Under 50%? That's pretty much the general percentage of notifications delivered. So that means that regardless of how personalized, contextual, and timely your messages are, they aren't even reaching a large segment of your audience. And in order to address that particular pain point, there's something called push amplification, right? And these can actually uplift your delivery rates by almost 30 to 45%. I know what you're thinking. Sounds dubious? Yeah? I see a lot of them nodding their head, so it does sound dubious. Don't worry, I had the same thought when my product guys came with this to me. I said, ऐसे थोड़ी होता है. But it is possible. And how does that work? So when it comes to delivering push notifications, think of it as this trifecta, right? At one end, you have the SmartX server or the Netcore server. You have the push delivery gateway, which could be your FCM or GCM for Android devices, and it could be the APNS for iOS devices. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have the smartphone user, right? So suppose you're sending a normal campaign. You're sending a push notification campaign through the SmartTech platform. It's still going to go through the delivery gateway. Now, some of those push notifications will get delivered to certain users. But as some of your good folks have said, that a large portion still does not get delivered. In the event of that happening, there's actually an API call that's made from the user's smartphone to the SmartX server, and those undelivered push notifications are eventually pulled and delivered to the smartphone user. Now, one big question here is, does it affect the smartphone user's battery life and processor bandwidth? It doesn't, because it just consumes about 0.7 to 1% of the smartphone user's battery life. And the beauty is that all your push notifications, undelivered push notifications, don't get delivered at once, because there's something called a time lag. You can actually select the time duration within which you want to get these undelivered push notifications to the smartphone user's device. So we saw with a leading online fashion app, the fact that before they were using push amplification, their CTRs hovered around 1% at most. But with the use of push amplification, they were able to increase their CTRs considerably because delivery rates went up. So essentially, by increasing your delivery rates, you actually reach out to a larger segment of your target audience. By reaching out to a larger segment of your target audience, you can actually increase your click-through rates and consequently and logically your potential conversions. So the idea behind increasing delivery is increasing customer engagement and conversions. And that brings me to hack number 5, the buzzword. Everybody wants to actually reach out to their customers where they are really present, right? WhatsApp as a channel today is blowing up for brands, not because WhatsApp actually supports promotional marketing, because they don't. It's more from a business notifications, a transactional messaging, and a customer support chatbot point of view. WhatsApp is very clear that they don't want WhatsApp to become another spam-based channel. So they have very strict templates and guidelines in place based on which you can send only a finite number of messages. And the reason why WhatsApp has now become what it is today to brands is because, I mean, let's be honest, the average person, or rather globally, let's say, uses WhatsApp for about 15 to 18 minutes a day. That's a massive amount of time spent on one particular messaging app. And the beauty is that it allows brands to actually engage with customers on a channel of their preference and convenience. So, just for context, this is just to give you a flavor of what a WhatsApp chatbot is capable of for the travel domain, right? And mind you, if a user initiates a conversation with the chatbot and has requested certain promotional related information, then it is not categorized as promotional marketing because it is information that a user has requested. But a brand cannot say that 20% off on tickets to Delhi. Those are not the kind of messages that a brand can send through WhatsApp as a channel. And WhatsApp also allows, again, this is the example of travel where you can actually, once the user has booked the ticket, you can actually send a confirmation or a PDF with the ticket attached as well. This is again to give you a flavor of what it's possible to do for an e-commerce platform, right? A user has initiated a conversation. This is all being handled at the back end. The chatbot has been programmed to respond to certain keywords or to certain options that a user has inputted, and then accordingly makes those required responses. And mind you, WhatsApp is very clear about the fact that if a user query is not being resolved within 6 to 7 responses of the chatbot, then there needs to be an agent handover, meaning that they don't want to disrupt the entire WhatsApp usage experience. They need you to have a manual intervention at the back end where that person can step in and actually respond to the user's query. So with that, it brings me to the end of my 5 growth hacks. As Obama says on screen, thank you for being a wonderful audience, and it's been a pleasure being here. Thank you.